who inhabit that world. But essentially, I think that really it's every cliche that you can imagine of it's the women who are very powerful characters. They're the ones who actually drive the story. The men, despite being good looking and they're overgrown boys with wealth and power and all of that, but they're effete, and it's the women really that drive the narrative. And I think that is one of the things that's been appreciated about the novel. So.
I was also, when you spoke about how you sort of overturned all these cliches, I was also surprised by how subversive you had got about, I mean, all these people are Bollywood people, right? And all they do, especially the 70s where Kapil Kumar is from, I mean, they danced around trees, they had these romantic songs, and these are immortalized and they're being remade now, often by their own children, as happens in the book. But outside of this, their lives are so perfunctory, their love lives are so stale. There's this guy who's upset because he has to cut short a sex holiday to go pick up his son from Eton and come back. And then there's this son who sort of apes his father's dance moves in one of his most popular songs and then gets caught when a woman is going down on him in public, sort of. So, this is how unromantic it gets. I was wondering, do you think people who are involved in the industry, where this whole idea of romance is so, it's so grand and it's so unreal, do you think their lives become more stark somehow?
Well, I don't know about stark naked for sure, but it's no. I mean, again, this again, lapses into another stereotype about the industry, and I think one has to be balanced about it. Obviously, there are people, when they're good-looking people, thrown into proximity in an outdoor location or even in a studio or in vanity vans or whatever you have it. Obviously, there is going to be in a classic Mills and Boon sort of sense, stirring of the loins and passions ignite, and possibly leads to more than just two flowers coming together or birds of a feather, flocking together. So all of that clearly exists, but at the end of the day, I think it exists across various industries, whether be it Bollywood or in publishing, as we have seen recently, or elsewhere in corporate sectors. And it's just that Bollywood is a wonderful, and it's a very affectionate look at Bollywood, really. So within that, yes, there's no shortage of colorful characters, and some larger than life.
When I was writing my book on arranged marriage, I asked people about what the myths about marriage are, what gets destroyed in the first year or so. And this one girl said, I would really blame Yash Chopra, because according to him, marriage is all about, singing and dancing in chiffon saris in Switzerland. So I'd like to ask you, how do you think Bollywood and growing up with those stories has shaped, even popular literature now, draws heavily from, what the writers must have grown up with. Do you think so?
Oh, yes. I mean, look at the latest Sanjay Leela Bhansali film. I mean, again, is a sort of Romeo and Juliet retold for the umpteenth time. God knows it's been done over and over again. Mansoor Khan with Josh sets it, so whether it's a retelling of West Side Story, which is another retelling of Romeo and Juliet. So you take these classic archetypes and then you play with it. And what would be fun is if it was turned on its head and contemporarized or given a new modern twist. I think that would be stimulating for a younger audience, and it would give us a fresh perspective. But and this awful trend of remaking movies, why not rely on a little originality and create your own stories rather than perpetrating those same stories that are been done to death, and take a classic and make your own classics or write your own classics, is what I would maintain.
Right. But when I speak to publishers, very often they say, that we would never stop bringing out these popular literature books, because those are what give us enough money to publish people like you, So, so I was wondering, from both of you, do you think cinema is the way it is and popular literature is the way it is because the audience wants it, or because the market assumes the audience wants it?
Well, popular literature is what, of course, the market demands, but then it also today has its own critical thinking, its own theorizing. So, given a chance, everything can become the stuff of a PhD thesis. So popular literature has become that. But yes, for publishers, at the end of the day, they are looking to make a neat profit. And this is what sells. My book on Milton, which costs about 5,000 rupees, is just not going to sell. It's an academic book, only libraries will buy. But popular literature is, of course, what makes their bread and butter.
Well, and I've always maintained that, well, I know that 50% of novels that are sold in the market worldwide are romance genre for young adults, and it's really a staggering percentage that, so there's a huge market clearly. And I just think that as long as people are reading in the age of cinema and internet and social media and all of that, if people continue to read, that can't be a bad thing at all. So as long as there is, and particularly as audiences get more sophisticated, perhaps, yes, you're looking for escapism, you're looking for an idealization, you're looking for catharsis. There's so many reasons why you go to read a book, and it may not necessarily be high literature. At the same time, who's to say a book that speaks to you isn't valid?
Also, if I may just add one word, that we talk about popular literature today, what the market will buy, but that has existed always. It's just that that has not survived. What survived are the classics. But this sort of writing has always been there for centuries.
Well, even sort of Charles Dickens wrote mass market fiction. It was obviously, as we all know, published as cliffhangers, quite literally, in newspapers, and the audience waited for the next installment to come out, and he was certainly pandering to the audience of the day, as did Shakespeare. I mean, there are a lot of, he was a crowd pleaser if ever there was one. So, I don't see any harm in that.
And Dickens survived, but there were, 15 other Dickenses of his time writing absolutely popular stuff, who just haven't survived.
When I spoke to Fahad yesterday, I promised him he wouldn't be outnumbered and it wouldn't be two women pointing at him and saying, you men, you've ruined our lives. So, but then I do have to ask about the character of Eve. Biblically and, in popular perception, it's always she who's blamed for succumbing to temptation. Whereas, and even in Milton's Paradise Lost, you have Adam saying, because you took this and you came from me, and we are bonded together, so I will take a bite of the apple too. So we are equally in sin and we will both die together. So he becomes a sort of romantic hero in that sense. But then you've also spoken about what a complex character Eve is. Though Adam always sees himself as superior, there are times when he's left floundering for answers and when she poses difficult questions. You also spoke about when she rebels, when she overhears him speaking to the angel Raphael, and then she says, okay, so I eavesdropped. So there's a lot of resistance coming from, let's say, the first woman, the first relationship itself.
Actually, the way Milton tells us the story of Adam and Eve is quite fascinating, because what he tells us in Paradise Lost, if you, after you've read the epic maybe 5 times and you understand the actual narrative, what he's saying is that Adam was created, and Adam first said to God that I must have a companion because I am superior to everything else in paradise, so give me a companion. And God said, yes, because you must also have children. I'll create a woman for you. He took a rib out of Adam's side and he created Eve. Well, when this Eve first gained consciousness, she heard a sound and she went towards that sound. That was a sound of water. And there was a pool. She looked into it. She saw her own reflection. And she thought it was very, very beautiful. Then she heard Adam's voice calling her and saying that, you are meant to be my companion. She looked back. She looked at Adam. She was convinced that this person she was looking at was not half as attractive as the image she was looking at in the pool. So she left Adam and went back to her own image. When Adam, in absolute sheer frustration, said, "That is only a shadow. I am real, and I've given a rib out of my side." And so reluctantly, almost, Eve came and joined Adam. And then Milton shows us in Paradise Lost, Adam and Eve together. And it's not just poetry and birds and flowers, but there is a lot of sexuality before the fall, but all presented in gorgeous poetry, marvelous. And then, as time goes, and always Eve is very careful. I think Milton's Eve is very intelligent. She never speaks first. She always allows Adam to start conversations, only speaking second. She keeps telling Adam that you are my superior. I will listen to you. You explain everything to me. But when the critical moment comes, one morning, she tells Adam, we waste too much time working together. You go work in X place. I will go and work in Y place. And then they have the first fight. And she wins. Adam reluctantly has to let her go and work alone where she wants to. What does she say? She turns to Adam and says, "Oh, thank you. With your high permission, then I go." As if Adam had given anything like permission. And she goes. She meets a serpent who comes and tempts her by telling her that you're going to be a goddess, etc. She eats the fruit. And then she remembers that God has said, if you eat the fruit, you will surely die. Now, first when she ate the fruit, she thought she was going to become a goddess. So she speaks to herself saying, what shall I do? Shall I share this knowledge with Adam? Shall I tell him I've eaten the fruit? She says to herself, perhaps not, to render me more equal. Meaning, let me become superior to Adam without his knowledge. Then she thinks, but God said, you will surely die. So perhaps I will die, and Adam will continue to live, and God will create another Eve for him from another rib. And then she says, no, I will share with him in bliss or woe. She never intended to share the bliss. But when there's the fear of dying and another Eve being created, she says, I'm going to tell Adam, and she does so. And Adam, for his part, his marvelous speech from him saying, etc., that the best of all creation has been destroyed. And Adam says, and here Milton leads heavily, in favor of Adam, getting Adam to say, I know God will create another Eve for me, but I wish to live my life with this Eve and no other. What better romantic story can you have than that? So that is really the best of the archetypal romantic story, you might say. And then it goes on, but in all of this, and from moment to moment, Eve displays a kind of knowledge that Adam never suspects her of possessing, kind of intelligence he never imagines she has. So, he's absolutely unsettled by all of this, which is always good, isn't it, in a relationship, if the man doesn't know that the wife is that much intelligent.
The other question I had, we spoke earlier about how, Bollywood cinema draws largely from literature and vice versa. But if you look at the evolution of film, both Bollywood and Hollywood, I think first in Bollywood we started off with the historical drama, the mythological ones, and then the patriotic cinema. And then there were family dramas, and then there was this escapism which came in. And I think that escapism finds a parallel in romantic stories, and that's never gone away, In Hollywood, again, you have parallel tracks where you have films like P.S. I Love You or Sex and the City or Bridget Jones' Diary. So there's a sort of merging of the two. And similarly in literature, you have, like you spoke about Charles Dickens, and then you have Jane Austen, who are considered classics. Whereas if they wrote now, they would be popular writers, they would not be literature. So do you think the quality of literature or our perception of the quality of literature has declined to the extent that anything that has to do with romance is considered pulp and popular and cannot be elevated to literature or to high cinema?
Well, you know, again, as I was saying about the retelling of classics, I mean, if we were to now consider Pride and Prejudice a classic in a truly romantic novel, the ultimate chick lit, if you'd indulge that turn of phrase. But then again, we have the retelling of that story through Bridget Jones' Diary. And, you know, the enormous success and the resonance it found internationally with men and women across the board, so much so that it becomes a novel, it becomes a movie. There's a sequel. There's now a third novel where she's killed off Darcy, apparently. So there is a constant retelling of certain stories such as this, which become timeless, but at the same time, it's still the simpering heroine. She still needs a man to rescue her, and who, you know, that knight in shining armor is very much the thing. So it amazes me that, you know, is this what women are looking for? Is this really the notion of romance, where you do want Darcy to come, sweep you off your feet, carry you off into the sunset, solve all your financial woes, you know, presumably he's very well endowed and is a fantastic lover and all of that. So it just goes on.
Well, I suppose it all depends on the woman also, doesn't it? I mean, there are different kinds of men and different kinds of women as well. So it's expectations are never uniform. Life would be too boring if that was so. So I'm sure that, you know, there are lots of differences and complexities in the kind of expectations that even we have as readers. Each one of us